The sky was bleeding red when she arrived, dragging the wind behind her like a funeral veil. He stood on the porch, one boot balanced on the rail, smoke curling from the corner of his mouth, the taste of bitter tobacco, the only warmth in the chill. The wagon creaked as it rolled over hardpan, wheels crunching against dry bone dirt. He'd been waiting half the afternoon, though he'd never admit to checking the horizon more than once. She was smaller than he expected, not frail. Something in her posture said she was used to carrying more than her body ever should, but younger and already round with child. The shawl she wore was thin and frayed, clinging to her shoulders like a secret. Her eyes never met his, not then, not when she stepped down from the wagon with stiff limbs and stood beside her mother, who looked more like a traitor than any kin ought to. The mother didn't waste time. "She's yours now." He said nothing, just reached inside his coat, pulled out the envelope, and handed it over. Weathered fingers snatched it quick. No receipt, no blessing. The woman was already turning the horse before dust settled. She never looked back. The girl, no, the woman, he corrected himself, remained by the wagon wheel, silent as stone. The wind caught her hair, dark and long, tangling it around her face. She didn't reach up to fix it, didn't move, even as the sun dipped lower and shadows stretched like claws over the ranch yard. He cleared his throat, unsure why it felt like blasphemy to speak. "You can come in. House is warm." A lie. He hadn't lit a fire since the morning. She nodded once but didn't follow. Not yet. She turned her head just enough to glance back at the fading trail, as if weighing her options. But the wagon was gone. The woman who bore her had vanished into the dust like she'd never existed. Inside, the house was cleaner than it had been in months. He'd swept, washed dishes that hadn't been used in years, changed the linens. Not for her. Not exactly. Maybe for the memory of decency. She stepped inside, slow as a deer testing a new path. Her hand stayed on her belly, not protectively, not tenderly, just there like habit. She moved without noise, eyes drinking in every corner. Nothing pleased her, but nothing surprised her either. "I'll take the floor," he said, already grabbing the wool blanket from the rocker. "You'll have the bed." She nodded again, set her bundle down, barely more than a threadbare satchel, and eased herself onto the edge of the mattress like someone expecting it to vanish beneath her. Dinner was quiet. Beans and cornbread, both a little cold. She didn't eat much. Didn't thank him, and he didn't expect her to. Words felt like strangers in the room, thick in the air and unwelcome. Outside, coyotes called out across the hills, their cries sharp and distant. She didn't flinch. By firelight, he studied her in the flicker. Her face was a map of small histories. Faint bruises not yet faded, a split lip half-healed, knuckles scraped raw. Nothing fresh, nothing tended. "What's your name?" he asked, though he hated how soft it sounded. She stared into the fire. The silence stretched long enough. He almost thought she wouldn't answer. "Don't matter," she said finally, voice low. "Rough. Ain't got anyone to call it." He didn't push, just nodded and sat back, letting the heat lick at his boots. Later, in the dark, he lay on the floor wrapped in wool, eyes on the ceiling. The wind had picked up. Boards creaked. The house whispered all the things neither of them would say. He heard her shift once. The mattress groaned under her weight. He thought of Sarah, of the night she'd gone into labor in the same bed, and how her hand had gripped his shirt so tight he'd found threads under his nails days after she'd passed. He'd buried her under the cottonwood tree, where no flowers grew. The room still smelled like loss. Sometime before dawn, the woman spoke. Just one word, barely audible. "Lark." He turned his head slightly. "What?" "That's her name." She placed her palm gently on the curve of her belly. "If she makes it." He swallowed hard. The name settled in the air like dust, soft but undeniable. Not for him. He realized she hadn't told him for his sake. She'd spoken it for the child. For herself. In the morning, she was already outside when he rose. Feeding chickens like she'd lived there all her life, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back. Her movements were mechanical, precise, like someone trained not to make mistakes. He watched from the window for a long time. The wind pulled at her skirt, tug at the hem of the world. This was no wife, no servant, no savior. She was a ghost still choosing whether to haunt the living or not, and he had paid coin to make her stay. The land had always demanded a price. He just never thought redemption might be one of them. Snow came late that year, dusting the fields like ash. The land didn't trust softness. It offered cold instead, quiet and mean, the kind of silence that filled the lungs and froze behind the ribs. He found her in it most mornings, out before sunrise, fetching water or feeding chickens with one hand resting on her growing belly. She moved like someone who didn't expect to be watched, or maybe someone who had been watched too often before. They hadn't spoken much since the night she gave the baby a name. Lark, he said it once under his breath, testing it like a splinter under skin. Didn't say it again. He worked the fence line while she patched the roof. She didn't ask for tools. Didn't wait to be told what needed fixing. It unsettled him, the way she seemed to fit into the place without truly belonging to it, like a rootless thing pretending to grow. One morning, she found him bleeding. A wire had snapped and whipped his forearm open. He meant to clean himself, but she was already there, kneeling beside him in the snow, eyes narrowed, jaw tight. "Sit," she said. He did. She poured whiskey over the cut with steady hands. Not a flinch, not even when he swore under his breath. "You done this before?" "Plenty," she muttered, tearing a strip from her own petticoat to wrap him. "People who get hurt don't always deserve it, but they bleed just the same." He watched her tie the knot, her fingers quick in practice. "You run from someone?" She looked up then. Her eyes were dark, but not cold, more like burned-out coals, heat buried under ash. "I walked away," she said. "Ran once. That didn't work." He didn't press, didn't ask who or why. He just nodded, like a man storing answers for later. The days crawled slow. The sun crept along the horizon like it was too tired to rise. They didn't talk about the future, didn't plan, but things began to change in small ways. She hummed sometimes while she worked, a tune with no words. He found himself lingering at the dinner table, waiting to hear it start. She started making coffee in the mornings, strong, black, bitter. He drank it anyway. Then came Eli Meeks, riding up the ridge like the law itself. Long coat, long shadow, mouth full of questions. He dismounted with the arrogance of man, who owned every acre his boots touched. "Heard tell you took in a girl," Meeks said, squinting under his hat. "Some say bought her." The rancher didn't reply, just leaned on the fence, letting the wind whistle between them. Meeks spat. "You know the kind of trouble comes with things that don't belong? She belongs to herself," he said. "Don't sound like it, the way she don't speak. She speaks plenty, just not to you." Meeks smirked. "You always play hero to broken things, Holden." The rancher flinched, but only slightly. It had been a long time since someone used his name like that, like it still had weight. "Mind your business," he said. Meeks's gaze drifted to the house, to her shadow in the window. That land deal's still open. Be easier without a mouth to feed. Holden didn't answer, not with words. Just stared until Meeks got back on his horse and rode off into the dust. That night, she didn't ask about the visitor. Just set down 2 bowls of stew and sat across from him. "He's not the last," she said. "No, they'll come harder next time." He nodded. "I'll be ready." She didn't thank him, but she looked at him different, like something in him had shifted shape. A week passed. The baby kicked. She let him feel it. Just once, his hand pressed against her belly while she stood still as a stone. A flicker, a flutter, like wings trapped under skin. He looked at her, but she was already looking away. "You ever think about leaving?" she asked suddenly. He shrugged. "No place to go." She didn't say anything to that, just walked outside into the falling snow. Late one night, he found her by the barn, sitting in the dirt, back pressed to the wall. He thought she was crying, but her face was dry, just blank. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "I don't dream good," she said. "Every time I close my eyes, I end up back where I clawed out from." He sat beside her, the cold biting through his coat. "I used to dream about a little house," she said, "near water. No men, just wind and grass and the sound of a baby laughing. Why'd you stop? Didn't seem fair to keep pretending." She paused. "Now, I don't know if I should hope again." He watched his breath fog the air. "Hope ain't a crime. Feels like one." The snow thickened around them. Somewhere distant, an owl called once and was silent. "You ever think maybe we ain't meant to survive?" she asked. He thought of the grave under the cottonwood, the letters on the cross worn near gone. Thought of the woman beside him, still half shadow, half fire. "Then we prove I'm wrong," he said. She looked at him. Not past, not through, but at, and for the first time, she didn't seem afraid of being seen. Back in the house, she lit a single candle. He stayed by the fire, listening to the wind batter the windows like fists. Before dawn, she opened the door to his room, wrapped in a blanket. "I don't want to be alone tonight," she said. He didn't touch her, just moved over and let her lie down beside him, her back to his chest, her breathing slow but trembling. Outside, the wind howled like a wounded thing. Inside, she whispered a lullaby under her breath, in a language he didn't know, soft and raw as a prayer. It wasn't comfort, exactly, but it was something that tried, something that wanted, something still alive. By midwinter, the snow was a shroud, thick and constant, muffling the world until even gunshots might have died unheard. Holden worked the barn in heavy coats and silence, breath clouding like ghost smoke, hands stiff with cold and age. She worked beside him now, slow with her belly grown high, but determined, always determined. She wouldn't be coddled, wouldn't let him carry what she still could. He watched her from the corner of his eye, not for weakness, but for the storm he knew was coming. Her time was near. Her body was ripening to the edge of breaking. Still, she never complained. Just pressed fingers to her lower back and trudged through drifts like it was a penance. Sometimes, when the wind stilled, she stood at the fence and looked east. Not wistfully, not in longing, more like she was checking to see if Hill was following. Then one morning, it came. The rider cut across the white like a knife, dark coat fluttering, horse kicking up snow. Holden stood on the porch before the hoofbeats even reached the yard, shotgun slung in his arms, not aimed, but not hidden either. The man dismounted with a swagger that reeked of someone who thought himself owed something. She stepped out behind Holden, froze mid-step. "Don't," she whispered. The man's eyes lit up at the sight of her. "Well, ain't you just fat with comfort?" "Get off my land," Holden said. The stranger grinned, teeth yellow, hands twitchy. "This ain't your business. Old man, I'm here for what's mine." "You ain't got a claim," she said, voice low and flat. "You're carrying my blood. That makes it mine." Holden shifted, finger tensing near the trigger. The man caught the movement, but laughed. "She didn't tell you?" "Course she didn't. She's good at keeping mouths shut when it suits her." "You sold me," she said. "You ran. I collected what was due." "You beat me," she added, and there was no tremble in it. "You broke ribs and teeth and still expected obedience. Woman like you needs discipline. You left me bleeding in a riverbed." The man shrugged, cocky again. "You didn't die." Holden moved between them. "You got 3 seconds of leave." The man's gaze turned sharp. "You think she's a victim, cowboy? She's a liar, a sneak. She'll make you think she's yours, and one day you'll wake up bled dry." 2 seconds, Holden said, but the man didn't budge. His hand hovered near his coat, and Holden knew what sat beneath. He raised a shotgun, not bluffing, and the man flinched just enough to know this wasn't his fight. "I'll be back," the man hissed. "She can't hide forever." Holden stepped forward. "She ain't hiding." The man spat in the snow, mounted, and rode off, fury trailing behind him like dust behind hooves. Inside, she sat at the table, hands trembling against a tin cup. Not fear, not anymore, just rage curled into bone. "You believe him?" she asked, not meeting Holden's eyes. "I believe you," he said. She nodded once. "Then I'll tell you the rest." Her voice came in pieces, like cracked timber. He wasn't the father, not by blood. He was her stepbrother, raised in the same dirt, under the same roof, until her mother drank herself into ruin, and he found ways to blame her for every echo of sorrow. When he touched her the first time, she was 15. When she bled after, her mother said it was God's punishment. When the belly came, they both decided she was worthless unless traded. He wasn't supposed to follow, wasn't supposed to know where she went. Now he did. Holden said nothing. Just place a hand over hers and let it sit there, steady and warm. She didn't pull away. The snow thickened that night, covered their tracks, their fears, the blood that hadn't yet spilled. 3 nights later, she went into labor. It started with a grunt, then a moan, then blood. Too much of it. She didn't scream. She bit into a leather strap, hands clenching the sheets like she meant to tear through the world. Holden panicked in silence. Memories of Sarah dying in that same bed clawed into him like wolves. He heated water, tore linen, muttered prayers he hadn't believed in since the dirt took his wife. She gritted out words between contractions. Don't you dare run. I ain't. Even if I die, you stay. He stayed. Hours passed like years. Sweat beaded on her brow. Her eyes went distant, but her voice stayed low and steady, talking to the child even as her own body tried to break. Come on, Lark, she whispered. Come fly. Then came the cry. Raw, piercing, alive. Holden caught the child, small, slippery, red as sunrise. He wrapped her in flannel and handed her over with shaking hands. She held the baby like a relic, forward against the tiny skull, tears leaking without sobs. She made it, she said, hoarse. Yeah, I didn't think she would. Neither did I. The child blinked up at the world like she already knew it was cruel. Outside, the snow stopped falling. The silence wasn't heavy this time. It was holy. Later, as Holden sat by the fire watching the two of them sleep, he heard a sound, a horse in the distance, a low creak of leather. Not near yet, but not far. He stood and loaded the shotgun, gaze fixed on the window. The storm had passed, but the reckoning hadn't. And this time, he wasn't alone. The smoke rose before the sun did, black against the bruised sky, curling from the barn like a warning. Holden was already outside, shotgun slung low, boots crunching over icy mud. He'd known it would come to this. Trouble didn't ride away forever. It circled back like a vulture once the dying began. She stood on the porch, baby swaddled tight to her chest, her shawl flapping in the wind. Her eyes weren't afraid, just tired. Ready? There were 3 of them this time. The first, the stepbrother, rode front, grinning like a man who'd already claimed his victory. Behind him, 2 others, dusted in trail soot, hard-eyed and twitchy with greed. One carried a rifle too fine for his hands. The other had scars crossing his knuckles like tally marks. Holden didn't move from a yard. You set fire to my barn, he said flatly. Consider it a warm hello, the stepbrother said, sliding off his horse. You've had your time to play family. I've come to collect what's mine. She ain't yours, Holden said. She's got my blood in her belly. No, came the voice behind him. She stepped off the porch. The child in her arms didn't make a sound. You lost the right to claim anything when you sold me like a mule, she said. This baby ain't your legacy. She's mine. Then give her to me. She laughed. A low, bitter sound. You don't want her. You want control. But I ain't scared of you anymore. The man's face twisted not with anger, but something worse. Entitlement turned sour. He stepped forward, hand twitching near his coat. Don't, Holden said, voice like gravel. The man's hand stilled. You think you're going to stop me? You're a relic, old man. You ain't got the fire. You're right, Holden said. Then he pulled the trigger. The blast cracked like thunder, echoing across the white hills. The stepbrother dropped where he stood, a hole in his chest smoking. The others reeled, one reaching for his rifle, the other backing toward his horse. She handed the baby to the ground gently, nestled in a bundle of wool, and grabbed the branding iron from the porch fire. The second man swung his rifle up, but not fast enough. Holden shot again. The man fell screaming, leg mangled, blood soaking into snow. The last one turned to flee, but she moved faster. The iron met the side of his face with a hiss. The smell of burned flesh choked the air. He screamed, dropped. She stood over him, hair wild, breath ragged, iron raised like judgment. "You want a mark?" she said. "You've got one." He whimpered. She let him crawl. Didn't strike again. Mercy, perhaps, but not forgiveness. Holden limped forward, breathing heavy. The gun slipped from his hands, fingers trembling. She looked at him, eyes full of fury and ache. He looked at the child, quiet in her little nest of blankets. "You all right?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I will be." Together, they buried the dead far from the cottonwood tree. No words were said, no prayers offered. The snow swallowed it all. The barn was gone, but the house still stood. The fire still burned. She nursed Lark by the hearth, silent and strong, while Holden boarded the windows tighter. The baby's eyes were open now, wide and unblinking, like she saw something in the flicker flame that even time couldn't name. Weeks passed. The wind softened. The sun stayed a little longer each day. He carved a nameplate by hand, the wood rough but sturdy. Not hers, not his, just a child's. He nailed it above the door as she watched from the porch. She didn't ask what it meant. She didn't have to. That night, they sat in silence, side by side, fire casting gold on their faces. "You think this is how it's supposed to be?" she asked. "No," he said, "but it's what we got, and maybe that's enough." She leaned against his shoulder, just enough to feel it. He didn't move. Outside, the wind carried no threat, just the soft sound of something beginning again,